Hello, good morning, good afternoon. No, should maybe afternoon for someone, but mainly good morning, I reckon. Welcome to the first Northwest Tug of 2022. I'm very excited. Are you, Ella?
Always excited. Although just trying to share my screen when I'm on one screen live from a Premier Inn. Slightly tricky.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Feel free to post any comments in the chat or use the Q&A if you do have any questions along the way. It's great to see you all here. We have 34 of us live this morning, so that's very cool. Al, are you good?
Yeah, it's all good. Let me see. Tell me if you can see something in a second. Right, probably see yourselves.
No, we can see the. Yeah, we can see the slides.
Good.
Yay, cool. Oh, great. Let's get started then. So, yep, as Lana said, welcome to the Northwest Tug. I think we're 4 years in now. We started at the end of 2017. So we had lots of in-person events for the first couple of years. And obviously the last couple of years we've had to go virtual, but still means we can open up to lots of people. So thanks for coming today. Let's introduce ourselves to start with. So I'm Ella Worsdale. I'm the head of business intelligence at a company called Integral UK, which is part of JLL. Been there for about 6 months. Previously, I was in the NHS for 16 years. Been using Tableau for 7 years. Absolutely love it. It's pretty much changed my life and my career over the last kind of 5 or 6 years. And also a Tableau user group ambassador. Lana?
Hey everyone, I am Lana Brown. I am one of the new school coaches at the Information Labs Data School. I got that role in January this year, so I'm very excited to be teaching all of the data school. I came through the data school back in 2015, so that's kind of where my journey started. I'm also a Tableau Zen Master and a Tableau Public ambassador, and I help co-lead Workout Wednesday, which is a weekly community challenge where we put your skills to the test with Tableau. Colin?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Colin Vojtovic. So I'm a data viz consultant. I'm a director of DataWatch, which is a company of one based in Chester. I've been using Tableau for about 5 years now to analyze and visualize research business data. So lots of survey analysis, reporting, building interactive data viz and sort of KPI dashboards.
Great, thank you. So we have a fantastic lineup today. Really excited to bring to you 3 guest speakers. So first up, we've got Heidi, who is going to do 20 tips in 20 minutes. I've seen Heidi present speed tips before alongside Lana and others before, and I'm always blown away. So really excited to see them tips. So get your pens at the ready because you're going to have to scribble fast. We've then got Reid, who's going to be talking about map layers and spatial joins. We've also got our famous Kahoot quiz at 10:50, which Colin with some prizes to give away. So that should be fun. And then finally, we've got Zach, who's going to be talking everything about Tableau Server. So we'll welcome him in at 10:11. And then we should be finished around about 11:30. And you can stick around. We'll be back on the tables and you can have a chat and network if you wish to. So it'll be good to kind of catch up then. Just before we kick off with Heidi, just wanted to kind of talk a bit about the Tableau community. I don't know how much people are involved in the Tableau community, but as well as the user groups, there's loads of kind of resources online to kind of really help in terms of Tableau, in terms of using Tableau desktop and culturally and things like that. There's a massive culture. So we'd really recommend if you're trying to if you're new to Tableau and you want to kind of learn more stuff, then Twitter and LinkedIn is a great resource. There's a huge kind of data family out there that are really supportive for Tableau. And there's some great initiatives. So if you are learning Tableau or trying to perfect your data viz skills, there's a few initiatives that are free and you can join in. So there's one called Back to Viz Basics, which runs kind of weekly and they set challenges and you can join in with that. There's Workout Wednesday, which Lana helps to support, again, weekly challenges around kind of technical functions of Tableau. It really kind of tests you out and gives you loads of new skills. And there's loads of other initiatives, including things like Sports Viz Sunday, If you're into sports, then it's a great initiative. And there's loads and loads of others out there. So there's loads of opportunity to really perfect your skills. There's also mentoring opportunities. So if you want to be a mentor and have got loads of skills to give back to the community, then you can sign up to be a mentor. Or if you wish to get a mentor, then this is a great link to it. And there's loads of other stuff going on, as I said. So it's worth kind of checking out. So just wanted to highlight that you don't have to wait to user groups. There's stuff going on in between. So I'm going to stop sharing and kind of hand over to our first speaker.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ella. All right, let me just share this screen. There we go. Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi Kalbe. I'm a senior consultant at Woodmark Consulting. I'm also a Tableau social ambassador, and I lead Data Plus Women Germany, as you can see at this sign in the background here. I would ask you to ignore what Ella just said about having your pens ready. Please don't. Please don't try to write anything down. Please don't try to take notes or to click along, because this is going to be fast. But don't worry, I have a link with all the tips that I have here that I'll be showing here. It's all documented in my blog. So again, please do not try to take notes, or you will miss things. That being said, there will be a bonus tip at the end, and it will take me a couple minutes longer. So it's actually something like 21 tips in 24 minutes, but that just wouldn't sound as catchy. So without any further ado, let's dive right in with tips number 1 and 2. All right, so in here, I'm looking at the comparison of the time it takes us to do taxes. So in Germany, for example, in 2012, it took us 14 hours less than the previous year. In Libya, it takes us 900 hours more, and in Sweden, it takes us the same amount of time. And I want to show that this is a difference, actually, and I want to make this super obvious by using symbols to show that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at UTF-8 signs, and in this case, I'm looking at triangles. So UTF-8 is this library of special characters that you can use anywhere, especially in Tableau, and you'll find why these are valuable. So I'll just copy this one out, and let's copy out a downward triangle, and let's go back to Tableau. So what I want to do is I want to right-click format this number in here, and let's actually look at the field. And in this case, I want to switch this to custom. So at the beginning here, I want to definitely add in a plus, and you can see that it changes in the background. But I also want to add in this upward triangle, and apparently I did not copy the other one. So let's quickly copy this one as well. And then for negative numbers, I want to have my downward triangle in here. All right, there we go. So now I have an upward triangle plus for positive change and a downward triangle minus for negative change. But the thing is, for plus minus 0, I also have the upward triangle plus, but it's not going up, right? It's still the same. So what can we do? We'll simply go back to your search engine of your choice, and we'll Google or whatever a plus and minus sign and just copy this from anywhere, really. Because what you can do in Tableau is like this first part of formatting is positive numbers, then a semicolon, then the negative numbers. And if you add in another semicolon, you can actually change the 0 values. So now we have upward triangle plus for positive, downward triangle minus for negative, and plus minus 0 for 0 values. So this was tip number 1. Tip number 2, what if you don't want this to be numbers? What if you just want to have text in here? Sure, your first impulse might be to create a calculated field, but I don't want to have a calculated field. I want to do this simply by formatting, and I can do that by simply going in here, getting rid of everything, and typing in more time, semicolon, less time, another semicolon, and same time for the same amount of time. So now positive values, I have more time, negative values, less time, and plus minus 0, the same time, all by simply formatting this number, not creating a calculated field. All right, if you've used Tableau for a while, you've probably come across these fancy marketing charts that don't hold a lot of analytical value, such as word clouds or bubble charts. And I do admit they are fancy. Yes, I've built them myself, but again, no real analytical value, so please don't use them in really important analytics dashboards. But let's say I want to have a bubble chart, but I don't simply want bubbles, I want to have shapes. Well, we can't really do that, but we can come kind of close to it by, again, using UTF-8 characters. So what can we do? Again, let's use for UTF-8. And in this case, I want to have fancy pictures. Because there's not just triangles, there's a whole bunch of symbols that we have, like an alarm clock or pizza slices or tulips or crossed swords or a crown and anything else you can imagine. So there's a whole bunch of them. And we can use all of these in Tableau. So what I did was I simply duplicated this field and I have edited my aliases. So in here, I, for example, have musical notes for entertainment and a cup of coffee for food, etc. And if I simply take this and drop this on label, then you can see I now kind of have a word cloud, but with symbols. All right, labeling. Let's say I want to label my bars. So easiest way of doing that is simply ticking this label at the top, and then they are automatically labeled. Usually they will be labeled at the outside end. So I can easily label on the outside end of my bars. I can label on the inside beginning of my bars, but what if I want to label the inside end? So not out there as Tableau would have me do it, but inside. Well, I can't do that easily, but it is possible. So first thing I do is I duplicate my axis by simply pressing Control and dragging this field next to itself. And then I get rid of labels in this first bit and I leave them in here. But I don't want a bar in here, I want Gantt bars. And I don't even need a size in here, I just want to have this single line. And I can label these on the left-hand side. And you can probably see where I'm going with this. So I can now right-click and make this a dual axis. Please remember to synchronize these. And now I have, and also get rid of the header. We don't need that anymore. And now I have kind of labeled the inside end of my bars. So that's one way of doing it. Another way would be to right-click on the axis and add in a reference line. Let's make this per cell. So you can see we have one line showing up per bar. I want to label using the value. I don't want any tooltip, and I especially don't want any line. And also, please don't recalculate anything for me. And now you can see I have these floating numbers here, and I can right-click and format, and again, change the alignment. So first, let's change it to the left-hand side, and sure, I can label them the inside end just as we did before, but I could also label on top or below the bar, whatever I fancy at any given moment. So that's tip number 5. Tip number 6, if you've ever used pages, so this nifty feature up here above filters, this is what it does. It helps us leaf through different perspectives of the data. In this case, I'm looking at inbound and outbound tourism in different world regions by simply leafing through the different pages. I here 1 page per world region. And I want to export this to PDF for whatever reason. So allow me to print this. I want to print just the active sheet, and let's simply save this anywhere. Really, it doesn't matter at all. And the thing is, I now have just this 1 page in here. So the 1 Tableau page gets turned into 1 PDF page. But that's not what I want. I do have these pages, so I actually want 1 PDF page per Tableau page that I have in here. So what do I have to do for that? I have to go to File and Page Setup. And at the very bottom here, you have Pages Shelf. And you can see that at the moment, it shows the current page only, but I could also say Show All Pages. And let's hit OK, and let's try printing to PDF again. Yep, and yes, I want to overwrite. And now I have 1 PDF page per Tableau page that I used to have. So very easy for printing out multiple aspects of your data without creating individual sheets. All right, sometimes when I'm working on calculated fields, I still am kind of in the process of this. So for example, I'm looking at my time to fund, and I currently have it in days, but I also have an option to have it in hours, and I can't really decide. So let's try again in hours. So simply add in these 2 forward slashes to comment this one out, and then I would have to remove multiple double forward slashes in every single row. And honestly, I just can't be bothered. So this is a comparatively brief calculation, but what if I have like 20 rows of calculations in here? Then I don't want to go through them individually one by one. But what can I do? Wouldn't it be easy if I could just highlight all of these forward slashes and vanish them one by one? But if I, or all in one go, not one by one. But if I simply highlight them using my mouse, that doesn't work. But what I can do is I can press my Alt key, and then you can see I can select characters that are directly below each other and simply vanish all of them in one go. And there we go. Now I have my time to fund in hours. Sometimes you may be using dummy axes or helper axes, as I like to call them. You may have a minimum of 0, as I have in here, or maximum of 1 or anything like that, that don't serve any value except they give you an axis where all the values are at one point, which can be helpful, for example, for donut charts. But it's not super helpful when all of them are called the same, because now in my marks card, I have aggregate of minimum 0 and I have aggregate of minimum 0 too. And it's kind of difficult to distinguish between the two. So what can you do? I don't want to persist them, which would be one option of giving them a name. I want them to have a name, but still be ad hoc calculations. And I can do that by simply double clicking. And let's move to the first position, add in 2 forward slashes and give this a name. So for example, this one is my dough. And then let's pull Shift Enter to add in a line break and Enter again to apply. So you can see that the pill has been renamed, the axis has been renamed, and also my drop-down thingy in the marks card has been renamed. And we can do the same for the other axis. So again, double click, move to the first position, 2 forward slashes, and this is my donut hole. Shift Enter to add in a line break, press Enter again, and now pill has been renamed, axis has been renamed, and the marks card thing has been renamed. And one more benefit of this is tip number 9. If I want to persist these now, as I said, I didn't want to before, but maybe I want to now, I can simply drag them over to the data pane, and Tableau doesn't ask me to rename because I already gave them a name. So that's kind of nifty. All right. One big discussion in the database community is whether or not we are allowed to truncate axes. And as a rule of thumb, I would ask you to please never, ever truncate an axis if you are using a bar chart. But with line charts, it's not quite this black and white. So some people may want to truncate, some may not want to. So what about we give them the option to? And we can do that by creating a parameter. And let's call this zoom axis ? So that people actually know they are allowed to choose something in here. And let's make this a Boolean. And true should be yes, zoom in, and no should and false should be no, show in full. All right, let's actually right click and show this parameter. Let's make this a single value list. And now we need a calculated field. And this will be my 0 line. And in here, we will have a super simple calculation. And we are looking at this parameter that we just created. And if it's true, so we do want to zoom in, then my value should be null. And if we do want to show the axis in full, so it's false, I want to have 0 in here. And this is it. And we'll see how that works in a second. So let's move this one to detail so that we can add it as a reference line. And it doesn't really matter. So we do want to have my 0 line in here. We don't want a label. We don't want a tooltip. And we don't actually want a line in here, but I'll show you one so that you can see what's happening as we go. And you can see we can't see anything because currently we have zoom axis on yes, zoom in, where my 0 line will be null. So we don't have a line in here essentially. But if I say yes, no, show in full, then I will have my 0 line in here, as you can see at the bottom. And what's the value of that? What's the benefit? So if I edit my axis, I want to leave this on automatic. I don't want it to be fixed. I want it to remain dynamic, but I do not want to include 0. So if I untick this box, nothing changes because I have my 0 line in here. So Tableau will automatically extend the axis to include my 0 line. But if I select yes, zoom in, my 0 line vanishes and Tableau is allowed to zoom in on my, or to truncate my axis wherever I have values. So that's a benefit. And if I simply edit this one out and I say I don't want to have a line in here, then it's invisible how this works. So very nifty option to have people choose for themselves. All right, I have a world map and I have some tooltips in here, and I actually want to color these tooltips. So the tooltip should be the same background color as my bubbles in here. And I can't really easily do that within the sheet, but I can do it in another sheet. So I have prepared something in here. You can see I have a label in here. So let me just add in a dummy axis of maximum 1. I will edit this one to be fixed to 0 to 1. I'll get rid of the header. Let's make this really wide. I don't want this header either. Let's maybe move down the opacity a bit, and I'll actually make this, fit the entire view. So not super helpful, but we're not actually looking at this sheet at all. We are still looking at this one. And in here, I can edit my tooltip, simply remove everything, and insert this sheet that I just created. I can choose how high and wide it should be. And if I click OK now, you can see that it is shaded in the background of the world region that I'm looking at here. All right. So what if I want to color my chart, but I can't reach my custom color palette? So I have a custom color palette with all my company's beautiful CI colors, but I can't reach it in here. And maybe you know your HTML codes by heart, but honestly, I don't. And the thing is, I can't reach my color palettes if I don't have something on color. So what do? Simply double click in the Marcs card, add in any kind of calculation, really just add in some kind of string. And let's move this one to color. And now you can see edit colors, and I can reach all of my beautiful custom color legends in here. And I can give this my beautiful CI colors. What if I'm looking at a timeline and I want to highlight my historical highs? So for example, 2000 was the highest value we've ever had up until 2000, and 2004 was the highest value we've ever had up until 2004. Well, I can do that by adding a simple calculated field. Let's call this historical highs. And in here, I'm looking whether the sum of my energy usage is the same as the running maximum of my energy usage. There we go. So it's essentially looking, okay, what is the maximum up until a certain point, and is the current value the same as that one? And if we move this to color, we can see all our historical highs highlighted in orange. And let's actually change these colors because we'll be reusing this chart in just a second. All right. How about geographical data? So we just saw this map where I had a bunch of countries and I had a bunch of regions. And we can see that each country belongs to exactly one region. So what if I don't want to show all of the countries? Maybe I just want to see one field for each region. So not these individually clickable things, but just one big Europe and one big Africa, etc. Well, if I simply remove country and region, Tableau tells us I don't know what I'm doing, because region actually is not a geographical field. So it doesn't have this little globe symbol at the front, but we can make it one by simply clicking on here and adding a geographic role. None of these really fit, but we can create a geographical role from country and region because each big world region is made up of the individual countries inside of it. So let's simply click OK. And you can see that Tableau calculates for a while. And then we have one big region for Europe, one big region for Africa, one big region for Asia, etc. All right. And what if I want to color the seas now? Well, we can do that by going to map and map layers. And currently the seas are white, or we can make them black, or we can make them blue. But what if I want to have a really crazy color in here for whatever reason? Well, I could go to an external mapping service and do that and then include that in here. But honestly, I just can't be bothered to do that because I really just want a quick and dirty solution. Well, what could be a quick and dirty solution? It could be to remove the base in here so we can't see anything. But I can format the shading of this whole worksheet and simply add in, I don't know, let's make it bright pink because why not? And then my C's are now colored in the worksheet background color. And it sometimes helps if you have a very intense color to dial up your opacity so that you can actually see the country colors that you have selected. All right. What if we want to do the same thing for our dashboard? So some people like it colorful, some people prefer to have just a white dashboard for if you want to print it out, because let's be honest, people do print out their dashboards. Or maybe it's the never-ending discussion about light mode versus dark mode. Well, you can definitely use this trick for that. So what is actually happening in here? So I have this one container in the front that is actually just floating around. And I have another floating container in the back, so you can see this one moves as well. And I have added in a show hide button. So this actually is just a show hide button that takes on different text and color depending on whether this green item is shown or not. And we can simply hide this item or show it depending on whether we want the background to be colorful or white. But what if we don't want to switch between two colors? What if we want to switch between many colors? Well, for that, we need to create this little helper sheet where we have our different colors in here that we can choose from. Honestly, it doesn't really matter how you do that. Personally, I like to do this with a pie chart, and I don't even have anything on angle because everything should be the same size, and simply add any kind of dimension that has the number of values that you need in order to show all the colors that you want. And then you need a background sheet. In my case, I simply created a tree map because it was the easiest to do. And I added in a set for my colors, and I have this on filter for my tree map. So how do I put all of this together? So I have this tree map in the background, and I have my actual charts in the foreground, and I also have this color picker. And I can add in an action. Oh, yeah, there we go. And I want this to be a change set values action. So what do I want to do? When I am hovering over the color picker, I want to affect this color set. And let's actually keep these values. And there we go. So if I hover over a color, you can see that it gets filtered out in the background, and I can make this any of these colors that I have in here. All right, but what if people don't know how to use this? So people will kind of look in here and they just move around their mouse and suddenly things happen, and this will confuse users. So what do? We go to create an instructive overlay. So we go to dashboard and copy this image. Let's actually do that and use a design program of your choice. Personally, I've never been into Photoshop because I've just never gotten the hang of it. So I'm going to use PowerPoint. You can easily use PowerPoint for that. And you will paste this in here. Well, I've actually already done that. And what I've done is you're going to create a border. Let's make it pretty invisible, but this helps us place the items that we have in here. And I want to have these symbols that help me say what I want to say. So click me to shade the background. Let's make this really, really obvious. And that should help people to understand what they have to do. So we vanish this background image. We don't need that anymore, but we select everything else that we have in here and right click and save this as an image. And then we go back to Tableau and we can insert this. Okay, it's not in here. Well, that's helpful. All right, so we actually have to save this as an image. Sorry. All right, so what are we going to do? This is not super helpful. We are going to, come on, Tableau. Okay, so we have, sorry, a floating container in here. In there, we will create an image or place an image. And let's use this image that I just created in PowerPoint. And now this can be seen in here, and we can simply use a show hide container to show or hide this helper image that we just created. All right. So currently I'm using a a hover action to use this, but then people will try to choose a teal shade, move their mouse, and suddenly everything is red. And we don't want that. So it would be easier to actually make this a select action. But then the thing is, if we select something, Tableau will highlight this one and gray out all of the rest. And that's not super comfortable, so we would have to double click, but honestly, we just can't be bothered to do that. So what do? We create another field, and let's call this deselect. And yep, this is just enter any kind of text. Could be deselect, could be anything else. We just want this to have the same value for every row in our data. And let's add this to detail, sorry. And now we add in another action, and this will be a highlight action. So what happens when we highlight something in Tableau? We don't actually highlight, we simply gray everything else out. And we don't want things to be grayed out, so we want to highlight everything. And we can do that by simply choosing the color picker. And again, it should only affect the color picker, and it should affect just this selected field, which is called deselect. And if I now select one item, you can see that Tableau highlights all of the rest. So we still have this black border. We still know which one we selected last, but all the other colors are also shown. All right, last two tips, running on borrowed time. What if I want to move this object around? So I want to move this to a location where I can actually see it. And sure, I could use my mouse, but maybe I want to make this in a really controlled way. So I can use my arrow keys, but then it's just super slow. What you can do to make it faster is press your Shift key, and then it will move 10 pixels at a time. So you can see this is a lot faster, and then I can still simply not use the Shift key if I want to make it really, really precise. So that's tip number 20. Tip number 21, bonus tip, I promise you that one. I want to add in some hints for my developers while people are already using this dashboard. So how can I do that? I can simply add in a floating text element. Let's call this an important hint for developers, invisible to end consumers. And sure, it is not invisible if I have it smack in the middle of my sheet, but I can move it to the outside of my dashboard. Well, I can't simply drag it there because then Tableau will assume that I want to drag it off. So don't do that. But what we can do instead, sorry, there we go, is we can simply drag one corner to the outside and then drag the other corner to the outside. And now we have important hints in here that will be invisible to consumers of our dashboard. And that's my 21 tips in 24 minutes. If you want to connect, please do. I'll post the link to all the tips in the chat in just a second. And thanks for listening. Have fun trying these out.
Ah, fabulous. Thank you so much, Heidi. They were brilliant. I was loving the dynamic axis and the colour picker amongst all the others. So some great ideas. Thank you very much. Can I invite Marc up to the stage? You are presenting next. Thanks, Heidi. Yes, that's working. Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here to talk about buffer functions and spatial joins. So my name is Marc Reid. I've been using Tableau for about 5 years now, and been interested in sort of the spatial functions for a while, and been playing around with them, creating lots of blog content and all kind of workbooks and things. So we thought I'd demo one today, which is the buffer functions. So let's dive in. So we're going to step through a scenario that is going to be finding an Airbnb near a charging point in London. So to do that, I've got two files. So I've got an Airbnb file, which I've downloaded, and a charging point file. So the Airbnb one has an ID for each of the Airbnbs, and it has their location encoded with the latitude and longitude fields, and it has various other fields as well. So we'll talk about the type of the Airbnb and the price and all that kind of stuff. And then similarly in the charging devices, we've got unique ID for each of those, and then the latitude and longitude, which we'll use, and then various other fields such as the type of connection and various other kind of attributes of those charging devices. So let's dive into Tableau here. Okay, and then we're going to connect to these files. So the first one I'm going to bring in is the Airbnbs. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into the view. And then Tableau will make a connection there. So you connect it to the Airbnbs in London CSV file. And again, you can see we've got all the fields here. We're going to be using the ID field and then the latitude and longitude. You can see the latitude and the longitude are decimal numbers. So we're going to be turning those into a spatial point. We'll get to that in a second. So we'll just go into the view. And then the first thing we're going to do is make a calculation. And this is going to be the Airbnb points. This is where we use the first spatial function, which is make point. I'll just zoom in here, and you can see this takes just two numbers. There's different format as well, but we can use this first format where it's just the two numbers, and that's the latitude and longitude. Okay, so that's our calculation, and then that will create this spatial point here, which we can then drag into the view. And again, I'll just show you quickly in the underlying data here what it's done. So it makes a bit more sense. So you can see our latitude and longitude, that's the field that we've used in this spatial function. And this is the point that it's created. So you can see you can't see any values there like you can here, but this is the spatial object, the spatial point that we're going to be using to map in Tableau. So we'll drag that into the view. So when you drag these spatial objects in, Tableau just brings them all in as one mark. So you can see on the lower left corner, there's just one mark. So we need to disaggregate those so we can see all the individual points. And the way that we do that is with this unique identifier that we have for each of the Airbnbs. So when we do that, we go up to 66,000 plus points there. So I'm just going to zoom in to this area here. Okay, so we've got the first file, we've got the Airbnbs. We now need to bring in the charging points, and we'll do some visual analysis first of all. So I'm dragging in now the charging point file, the CSV. I'm just going to drop that into the view. And then Tableau connects to that. And similarly, we have the same kind of fields here, the ID and the latitude longitude as decimals. So we need to create a spatial point for the EV charging points. So we call this EV points. Point, latitude, and longitude again. Okay, so then we can take the EV points and we can add these as a marks layer. So we have this function now to just add these multiple marks layers. So I just drop that into that orange box and it adds them into the view. Now it's quite difficult to see because they're all formatted the same. So we need to do that same process of disaggregating these. So we'll find the ID field for these charging points, add that into the view. That'll disaggregate those. So we've gone up to 71,000 marks now. And then I can just change the formatting of these. So I'm going to make them a shape, make them a cross, and we'll turn them red. And we'll just make them a bit bigger as well. So you can see we're starting to see now where things are in the view. And as we can sort of drag around now, we can see, okay, we've got lots of charging points here. We've got lots of Airbnbs here, but no charging points. So we can do some kind of visual, just high-level visual analysis of where we might want to stay, which Airbnb we want to choose. But it would be much better if Tableau is able to just tell us which of these Airbnbs within a certain range of the charging points. So let's say we're happy to walk up to 500 meters to get to our charging point where we leave the car. So that's what we want Tableau to tell us. So the way we do that is to actually create a join. So we're going to have to close this file down now. And Tableau just say we're going to remove the charging points. So that's fine. And then I go into the data source view for the Airbnbs. And I'm going to bring the charging points file back into the view, but I'm dropping it into the data source pane now. So instead of creating a new data source, what Tableau is doing is adding a second connection onto the same data source. So I'm just going to rename this so it makes a bit more sense. So this is going to be Airbnbs and charging points. Then what we can do is join these together. So if I take the charging points file, I'm just going to make this bigger and drag this out here. It's going to create a relationship. So we don't want to use a relationship in this particular use case because we can't create spatial joins with the relationships. So I'll drag this off, and then what we need to do is go into the physical layer. So I'll just double click, or alternatively what you can do is click this drop down and go to open, and that'll take you from this logical layer here into the physical layer. And then pick up the charging point file, or table rather, and then it creates this join. So then we want to create the intersect spatial join. But to do that, we need a spatial object on both sides of the join. So we're going to create the spatial point for the Airbnbs. So it's using that same make point calculation that we used before, latitude and longitude. Just zoom in on that. So exactly the same as what we used before. It's taking these decimals and creating a spatial point. Okay, and then on the other side of the join, we want to put a buffer. So buffer, and I'll talk about this a bit more in a second. Make point, latitude, and longitude. And then we just say the number, which is the distance, or you can consider the radius of the buffer. In this case, we're going to say 500 meters, and then we just specify that we are using meters here. Okay, so I'll talk through this a bit more in a second, but we'll just click OK to create this join. And while that's working, okay, we'll just create the intersect. So yeah. So now what it's going to do is find all the Airbnbs that are inside of those buffers. So we'll just do that join now. And while it's doing that, I'll just flip back to these slides for a second. So this join is quite important for the analysis that we're doing. So I'll just talk through what it's doing. So on the left-hand side of that join, we had the spatial points for each of the Airbnbs. And on the right-hand side, I'm just showing one example of one of the charging points. So what we've done with the charging point is put it inside of a buffer calculation, and that's created a buffer around that of a particular distance, and we've chosen to be 500 meters. So we now have these two spatial objects, the Airbnb points on the left, the buffer on the right. We can then join them with that intersect, and what that does is it overlays them, and you're going to see some of the points will be inside of a buffer, some of them will be outside. So then those ones that are outside will fall out of the join because we're doing an intersect, so it only takes the ones that are matching together. So then what we're left with is all of the Airbnbs that are inside of any of the buffers, and that's what we'll continue to use in our analysis as we go forward. Okay, so that join is done. We can go back to the view now. And then you can see a number of these points will disappear. So we'll just add in the charging points again. So it's going to be the EV points. Now you can see, because we have both these files joined together now, we have access to both the latitudes. So we just need to make sure we're picking the charging point one, it's the second one. Same again. Okay, so we've got that calculation. And then we can add those back into the view, EV points. And then we'll do the same thing. We just need to disaggregate those. So the charging device ID, put that on there to disaggregate those. And then we can just format those as shapes again. Make those a bit larger. Okay, so now you can see as we zoom out, we've got a different kind of view here. We're only seeing the Airbnbs which are within range of 500 meters of any of our charging points. So it's really useful for doing this kind of spatial analysis. We want to see where items are close to each other. So this could be, in this case, we're using Airbnbs, charging points. This could be if you're starting a business and you want to make sure it's within range of other businesses or customers, or all kinds of things. And maybe you're buying a house and you'll make sure your house is near to schools or other facilities and so on. So it'd be useful to also see the buffer on here to make sure these are in range. So the way that we can do that is the EV buffers. So we use this same calculation in the join, but when it's in the join calculation, it's just being used purely for the purposes of join. So it's not actually adding it to our data model. So we just need to recreate it here. So it's exactly the same as what we used in the join. And then we'll just add that into the view as well. Okay, and what I'll do in a second is actually just filter down to these 3 charging points, just to make things a little bit quicker, so we don't need access to all of the marks in the view really while we're doing this. Okay, so it's taking a little bit longer than expected. So let me, let's do that now actually. Let's just filter those down. So I'll just disable the selection on these, hide these for a second. So then what I'm going to do is just select these, right click and just keep only those. And then you see we've gone down to 63 marks now. So it should be a little bit quicker. Okay, let's bring our buffers back on. So you can see again, these have all come in as one mark at the moment. If I hover over them, they're all getting highlighted. So we can just disaggregate those as well. We'll find that same ID field that we used for the charging and just put those onto the buffers, put that onto the detail. It's going to disaggregate those, so they're now 3 separate objects. Then we can just format these. We might make these yellow and just much brighter. Like that, and then we can move these to the bottom of the stack as well, so that the other points are on top. And we probably don't need to select these, so we can disable the selection and turn these back on. So we've got our Airbnbs, they're all in range. We can see our 3 charging points. So maybe we can just add a bit more information. We'd like to know the exact distance between each Airbnb and the charging point. So we can use another spatial function for that, which is called distance. So we'll do this now. We'll call this EV distance. And this is going to be from the EV point to the Airbnb points. And we just need to say what we're going to measure in. So again, we'll use meters to be consistent. So again, we're taking 2 spatial points on this one, the EV charging point, the Airbnb point, and then just the distance that we want to measure the unit we want to measure the distance in. Okay, so then we can go to the Airbnb points and we can find our distance calc. We'll drop that onto detail. And then as we hover over now, we should see the distance on there. So I'll just format the tooltip, make this a little bit bigger. See that. Okay, so we can see this one is 323 meters away. This one's 205 and so on. So this is all good. You'll notice there's one point which is within range of 2 of the charging points. And the distance looks a bit exaggerated there, so we have a problem. The reason that's happening is because when we do the spatial join, a point that's within range of both, within 500 meters of both, with 2 charging points, it's duplicating that Airbnb row. So then what's happening is it's summing up the distances. So we just need to change that aggregation on this distance calculation. I'm going to change that to a minimum because I'm more interested in seeing the distance to the closest charging point. So it's 330 to this one here. Okay, so what if we change our mind and decided we only want to go to 300 meters? What we could do is change the join calculation, but then we'd have to change that every time. Now, unfortunately, you can't put a parameter into that join calculation, but another way to solve this problem is to actually keep all of the Airbnbs up to 500 meters, but then just format them whether or not they're in range or not. So to do that, we can use a calculation to say, is the Airbnb within a certain range from the charging point? And we can use that with a parameter as well. So let's create a parameter. Ooh, I've already got it here, actually. I'll just show you. And I'll just edit that just so you can see it. So what I've done is create a parameter called p.distance, and it's an integer, current value of 500, and it ranges from 50 to 500 in step size of 50. So I can click through those different numbers. So then I need to update the buffer calculation so that it's now dynamic. So we'll go to our EV buffers, those, and instead of being hard-coded 500, we'll put our parameter in here. Okay, and now what happens when I change this value? You see the buffers change their size, which is great. So the only thing to do now is actually format these marks based on whether or not they're in range. So to do that, I'm going to create another calculation, call this in range. And I'm just going to say, is the EV distance less than or equal to our parameter distance? So this is a Boolean calculation. It's going to return true or false. And it's just going to say, is the distance over here less than or equal to this distance here? Okay. And then we'll say in range, put that onto our Airbnb points, onto color. And you can see we've got two colored Airbnbs, orange and blue. So I'm just going to change the colors of those. And if it's false, I want it to be kind of a light gray, sit in the background. And if it's true, we'll make it kind of a bright blue color. Okay, and I might just make these slightly bigger as well. Oh, I need to just make these circles actually. There we go. Okay, so we've now got this dynamic visualization here, so we can change the size of our buffers, and we can see whether we've got more or less Airbnbs in range of those charging points. So we'll just do one final thing, which is to add in another calculation to tell us how many of these points are actually in range. That might be useful to know. So we'll create another calculation. It's just going to say total in range. What I want to do is count the IDs of the Airbnbs. So what I'm going to say is if it's in range, then return the ID. Let's do nothing. So what this is doing is saying it's looking at this conditional. So it's looking at the in range calculation that we created before and saying if the Airbnb is in range, then return the ID for that Airbnb, and then I'm going to count those. However, I don't want to count them across the whole visualization. I want to count them for each of the charging points. So I need to fix this calculation at each of the charging points. So to do that, we create a fixed calculation. And then we're going to take the charging device ID and just close that off. So what this is saying is for each charging device, count the Airbnbs that are in range and then return that number. So then for the EV points here, I can take the total in range and add that to the label for the EV charging point. And you see some numbers have appeared. We'll just make those a bit larger. Okay, so hopefully this will update now when we change the size of the buffers. You see it's now telling us how many Airbnbs are in range of each point, which is pretty useful. So there's lots of different applications for this. Hopefully you've thought of some of those and found this useful in terms of an introduction to various different spatial functions in Tableau. So I'll just leave you with a few resources to close out. I have a couple of Tableau Public visualizations on buffers and map layers and spatial functions, so you can check those out. They're all downloadable. And then I have a number of blog posts as well. One of them talks through a more kind of advanced application of this and basic buffer functions and Tableau map layers. And then just recently I've been making a few videos on spatial functions as well. I've just created a video on buffer functions which go through pretty much what I talked to in this presentation. I'll release that hopefully today. So yeah, hopefully that's been useful. Lots of resources there, and I don't know how we're doing for time, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Marc. That was. Let's try and put my camera on. Thanks, Marc. That was great. Really useful.
Okay, next up, I think we have Zach, who's from across the pond, so it's very early for him. So good morning, Zach. How are you?
Doing all right. How's it going, Lorna?
Yes, very well, thank you. Very well indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. What time is it for you now?
6:20. It's not bad. That's a normal day.
And I was complaining about getting up at 7:30 this morning, so never mind. But yeah, thanks again, Zach, for coming to join us. Feel free to share your screen and start whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Lorna.
No
All right, so
problem.
let me share my screen. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to be a little bit ambitious, and in the next 20 minutes or so, going to teach you everything-ish about Tableau Server. So not going to spend much time on myself. My name's Zach. If you haven't, seen me before or heard from me, nice to meet you. I lead the Tableau Center of Excellence for JP Morgan Chase, where I kind of focus on everything all across the whole spectrum of Tableau. So server, design, training, tugs, pretty much everything that you can think of. I'm certified in both desktop and server. I'm a Tableau ambassador, specifically in the data depth program. And you can find me on Twitter and on my email right there if you're interested in just reaching out. I'm always happy to chat with people. Or if you have any questions that I don't get to today, I'm always happy to answer those questions. So let's go through this and talk about Tableau. So what is Tableau Server? This one, the way this presentation is structured, we're going to start kind of with the easy stuff and we're way to more advanced as we go. So we'll start off with what is Tableau Server. Tableau Server, if you're not familiar, is the place where you're going to share your workbooks, share your content, share your creations with others. It's available to everybody via a URL. Has various options for securing things with permissions, scheduling things, alerting things, lots of other features that we'll kind of dive into over the next few slides. Something that I always try to shout out towards the beginning of this presentation is the Tableau Blueprint program. So if you're not familiar with this is essentially a series of documents and information white papers about how best to deploy your Tableau server at scale in your Tableau environment and just basically work for a lot of data stewardship and things like that within your organization. Talks about how to set up your servers, how to keep them scaled, how to keep them governed, how to educate your users, how to get people excited. So definitely take some time to go through the blueprint. And I'll have a link towards the end of the presentation about that as well. So let's talk about the types of servers. So Tableau is, there's a lot of options with how you're going to deploy and scale your Tableau server. You can start with on-premises. So a good majority of users still use on-premises Tableau server today. So this is built and housed inside of your infrastructure. It's deployed on physical hardware. Typically, it is, it's hosted and owned by typically server admins, administrators, people in IT at your company. Alternatively, you do have the SaaS option from Tableau, which is Tableau Online, which is cloud hosted by Tableau. So if you don't want to have the work that goes into hosting your own infrastructure, keeping it updated, patched, all those things, you can go with the Tableau Online, Tableau provided option. Additionally, you have Tableau Public. So probably everybody here knows what Tableau Public is, but Tableau Public is a no-holds-barred version of Tableau that's open, available, and accessible to all users. You just can publish anything that you want out to Tableau Public, and with the URL, you can share that out to anybody. Now, you can also deploy to cloud. So you can always take the Tableau server infrastructure, deploy it to Tableau, use things like AWS to deploy it out there. It doesn't completely take advantage of all of the advantages of cloud processing today, but there's a lot going into Tableau over the next 6, 9, 12 months that will actually take Tableau and make it a lot more scalable and useful in a cloud environment. You also have two options when it comes to license models. So you can go between user-based and core-based. User-based is essentially paying for the users themselves. So if you have 10,000 users or 15,000 users, that is what you're going to pay for. And that's going to be split across the three main licensing types of Viewer, Explorer, and Creator. Alternatively, and less common these days, is the option to go with core-based. So you pay, instead of paying for the users, you pay for the machines themselves and how many cores you add, and the users themselves are unlimited. This is specifically advantageous when it comes to things like external use cases where you may have, tens or hundreds of thousands of users. It's definitely a good option to have this. It's also very unique in the way that it has the guest account. So anybody can be given access so long as the guest account is turned on. That's something that's not available in the user base. So things to consider, how much money you want to put into the environment, how many users you have. Are you planning to scale up the environment for performance, things like that? So lots of consideration as to which route you would go. But nowadays, most people do go the user-based route. So the objects inside a server, if I can pick the right screen. So we'll go through this list. So there's a lot of different things inside a Tableau server. These are kind of the 8 that I see as the most valuable, most critical that you should know. So we do have workbooks. So workbooks are your actual Tableau content. You probably are aware of this, but this is the file itself. This is the file with the data viz, the objects inside of it. Sometimes the data sources that are embedded within it, but this is the kind of the primary item when it comes to Tableau. Below that, we have the data sources. So these could be either embedded or published separately. These could be live connections or extract. There's a whole variety of different options you have here, but those are kind of your 2 primary things: are workbooks and data sources. Within a Tableau server, this is where it kind of gets unique to Tableau. You have different ways to structure your content. So, for example, you can have a site. A site is a wall between content on your server. So, if you want to enforce complete disparity between 2 different things and you want to make sure that they cannot touch each other, a site is an option that you can use to structure things. Example would be HR content. Sometimes and oftentimes I see different organizations use site to structure very sensitive things like HR, compensation, payment, things like that. Outside of that, sites can be a bit of a pain to deal with. And actually, it's the best practice to not scale with sites. It's better to scale with projects because you still have a lot more fluidity in how you connect things, how you bridge things, and it's not as rigid as a site. So speaking of projects, projects are more like folders on your Tableau server where you can structure things, structure the objects and the content below them, associate permissions to those projects, and still have the flexibility to share, but also have the flexibility to constrain. Schedules allow you to schedule different refresh tasks and different alert tasks, different things like that. And then tasks themselves are the things that are happening on the server. So you might have a data set that refreshes every day at 7 o'clock. You might have a alert that generates every 30 minutes. Those kind of things are what's going to be running on your task. And then users and groups. So users are the people themselves, of course, and groups are how you typically will can contain those users and provide them access to content, so forth. Within Tableau, you do have the Tableau toolbar. This just allows you to have a lot more flexibility on what you're doing inside of Tableau, as opposed to what you have in just desktop. You have the ability to quickly go back and forth between changes as you click on things, just the back and redo. You can refresh the data against the source, but you can also pause it if it's live. You have the ability to create custom views, save those, and make those available to others. Customize alerts when you click on axes. Define metrics if there's a certain value inside of your dashboard that's interesting to you. Subscribe and subscribe others. If you want them to get a PDF or an image on a daily cadence, for example, you can do that. Edit is available only if you do have those proper permissions. Share with others, download things like images, PDF, Excel, make comments on the dashboard, and see a full screen. I did also, at the bottom here, copy a version of the upcoming toolbar. So this is in beta right now, but it's just a little bit cleaner view. So this is the old view up here towards the top. This is the new view. So you can see they've kind of stacked things into multiple options. So watch is now where you can see the subscribe and the metrics and alerts, as opposed to seeing dozens of different buttons up here. User roles. So it's important to know the user roles, especially when you're paying for them. So you're going to be paying, when you come to a subscription-based license or user-based license, based on whether they're a creator, an explorer, or a viewer. So we'll start with the highest entitlement first, which is creator. So creators are those that typically are provided Tableau Desktop and sometimes Tableau Prep as well, Tableau Prep Builder, where they can develop things, build things, and then publish things. These are your highest level people. And included in the set are server admins, site admins, and creators themselves. So a server admin, as it sounds, provides the user full access to the server to create things, build things, schedule things, see all the statuses. Usually these people have access to TSM, which is your administrative console for users. Just pretty much the whole gambit of everything. Site admins are a lesser version of that, where they can see everything and control everything within a site. So if you want to give users almost the entire control and just give them their own area to play around with, site admins is the way to go. And then creators I kind of mentioned. So these are the people that are usually building content, publishing content, typically using Tableau Desktop. Explorers. So explorers is kind of your middle tier. So explorers include their own version of site admin, which is explorer only. The only thing that's really different here with a lot of explorers versus creators is they can still build things. They can build things on the web. They don't get Tableau Desktop as part of that license. And also they cannot create new data sources. So they can't connect to, a Postgres from Tableau server. They have to rely on something that's pre-built for them. Explorer can publish. This is another option. So this is just, again, somebody that's in that middle tier that can build things in the web. They can connect to pre-stored data sources. They can save. They just can't connect to something new. And the same with Explorer. They just are not able to save their work. And then finally, viewers. So viewers are pretty straightforward. Viewer is your end user. Viewer are people that should be able to see the content, interact with it, use the things that we mentioned on the toolbar, all those default features, but not anything more than that. Permissions themselves. So permissions inside of Tableau Server, they've definitely grown over time. They used to be a lot more simple, back 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. There's a lot more things in Tableau Server. And of course, because of that, permissions have grown as well. So permissions can be set and evaluated at the group level or the user level. And this is kind of a example of the different things you can do. So within a group, I can define across the project, workbook, data source, data roles, flows, and metrics, the different permissions themselves. So every time I click these tabs, you'll see a different set of permissions. And then I can set whether they are allowed, whether they are denied, or whether they are inherited by a higher level role. And to make that make a little bit more sense, I really like this diagram. I usually send this to people if they have any confusion about how these permissions really align and how they work. So just kind of going through this, the first thing you're going to look at, if maybe you're confused about whether they should get access or why somebody doesn't have access, is the capability outside scope of the site role. So the site role is those different levels of entitlement that I mentioned. So let's say, can I save a workbook? If I'm the explorer that cannot publish, then no, because my site role is telling me that I can't do that. So if it's a capability outside of that role, it's denied. Okay. Am I a admin or project leader? Okay, then the answer is yes. So whatever that permission is, whatever I need to do, these two kind of give that in there. I didn't mention project leader because that's not really itself a separate role, but project leader is kind of a pseudo role that allows a group or user to get kind of elevated permissions below a site admin within their project. Okay, so I'm not an admin or a project leader. Am I the owner of the content? If that's the case, then yes, I'm allowed. So the owner of the content, this is something with Tableau Server, you basically just get the access that goes with those higher entitlements. So if I own the content, I can delete it, I can edit it, I can save it as, I can change the name, all the random things that most users cannot do. Okay, am I denied specifically as a user? All right. So does something in my settings as a user turn this off? If it's yes, then it's denied. If no, all right. Am I specifically allowed as a user? Now, the reason that these are here in this position in this chart is because the as a user is higher than as a group. So if I as a user have permissions, it's going to ignore what the group says. It's going to say, okay, Zach Geis is set to allowed. So whatever the groups say, it didn't matter. Am I denied as a group member? Yes, it denied. And these kind of get to very, very obvious things. So, very useful chart, very useful diagram if you're ever confused about, why is Tableau doing the thing it's doing. All right, I'm going to start speeding up because we got a lot to cover in about 5 minutes. So Tableau Mobile. Mobile allows you to look at your dashboards on a mobile device. This works in iOS and Android. It also works with the BlackBerry suite if you use that at your company. So some cool stuff there. Ask Data. You've probably seen this before, but this allows you to ask natural questions of your data on any data source as long as this is turned on your server. Just to find answers to it allows you to set synonyms, things like that. It allows you to build custom charts if you want to go a little bit further. Going into Tableau Prep. So Tableau Prep Conductor, so long as you are entitled to do so, you can use this to schedule your prep flows. So if you want to run things on the server and actually have, prep jobs actually go through and build your data sources, extract those and, deploy them to the server, you can do that very quickly. TSM. So TSM, I mentioned this earlier, this is Tableau Services Manager. So this allows you as an admin in a UI to control what's going on inside of your server. So there's a lot going on in here, but this example allows you to change your topology. So if you want to turn on certain processes and move them across your nodes, you can do this. Other administrative things like your licenses, identity stores, things like that are in here as well. There's a couple add-ons to Tableau Server. So the server management add-on, I really like this tool, specifically the resource monitoring tool. This allows you to see what's going on in your server, track the things that are happening in the BizQ, all the processes, go down to workbook level, see what's happening on those, see if they're going out of certain thresholds when it comes to performance, things like that. It also comes with the deployment tool, as well as some other scalability functions for cloud. Data management, this one's definitely updated a lot recently. So this comes with the catalog and the metadata API. Well, actually, metadata API is always turned on, but it comes with the catalog, which shows things that are happening on top of Tableau. So you can kind of see the chain of reactions as they go through here. So you can see like how lineage affects things, if something changes, what happens down the stream, things like that. And it comes with the prep conductor that I mentioned. Other things like virtual connections are coming as well. That's recently a recent thing that came out of Tableau. Tableau status screens. These allow you to see a lot of things that are happening on Tableau. These are built in for anybody that's at least a site admin or a server admin. You can see the traffic to views. So this is your usage. You can see performance. You can see background task. Here's an example of one of those screens that show, well, two of the screens that show how are the extracts handling, how do they perform throughout the day, what is the performance of or the usage of the views across the day. But you can always build your own. So you can always connect to the Tableau Postgres repository. Basically, all you have to do is make sure that you're activated on that. You can connect to it with any tool, including Tableau, and then you can publish your own dashboard. So a lot of options there if you want to build your own analysis on what's happening in your server. All things on Tableau can render either server side or client side. So when something is rendered server side, that means that the server is doing the entire process of your usage of that chart. So from beginning to end, it's going to do everything. Client side means that at a certain part of the process towards the end, it's going to pass to your local browser and it's going to run that itself. The reason that I like to mention this is because this is pretty important. This sometimes can cause performance bottlenecks and issues like that. It also is useful to look at if you ever have kind of like wonky visualization issues where things don't look like you would expect inside of Tableau. There's a few open source tools for Tableau. One is LogShark. This allows you to take all your logs, put them into this workbook, and then analyze things like error rates and performance, things like that. TabJolt, which allows you to impersonate users and simulate load from one server to another. So if you ever want to actually like take a workbook and see what's going to happen when I scale this up to 500 users, you can use Tableau to do that. Tabmon is useful for if you want to see what's going on in the box itself. So look at latency over time, look at performance thresholds, look at bottlenecks, look at your CPU and your memory and things like that. Tableau Developer Program. This is important if you ever want to learn more about Tableau and specifically the APIs and things like that. I encourage you to go to Tableau Developer Program. I think it's tableau.com/developer. And one of the couple things you'll get is a free sandbox site for playing with Tableau Server, playing with the API, stuff like that. You'll get added to some Slack channels. You'll get direct contact from the devs that work on Tableau and all the good stuff like that. Lots of different APIs for Tableau. JavaScript API allows you to embed things. REST API allows you to programmatically interface with Tableau Server itself. Extensions API allows you to build custom interfaces inside of Tableau Desktop. Analytics extensions allow you to extend Tableau with data science kind of languages. Document API allows you to interact with Tableau content itself and programmatically work with XML, like to change a password. Hyper API allows you to connect to and create data sources from maybe things that are not easy to work with or not native in Tableau. Web Data Connectors is a SDK that allows you to build your own connectors to web-based data and APIs. And the Metadata API allows you to track lineage and other kind of data there. We're getting towards the end here. I know I'm a minute or two after. Server architecture. I'm not going to go through this too much, but this is a diagram basically showing some of the main components of Tableau, specifically on the server side and what they do. So these are the different tiers and the different processes that are hosted on those different nodes. Process topology, I could talk about probably a whole session on this, but this is where you can kind of move things around if you want your backgrounders, meaning your actual refresh jobs and things like that, your extract refreshes to perform better. You might want to put them on their own servers here. You can move things like VizQL that actually render the viz to other nodes. There's a lot of different ways to align processes to work the best for your server and your use case. High availability is worth mentioning. In just 1 second to get a drink. Is worth mentioning if you want to make sure that your servers are always available and ready in case there's ever a disaster event. This is just an example of a high availability cluster where you have an external load balancer on top. So if one of these nodes ever goes down, you can actually flip the load to one of the nodes. It will be dilapidated a little bit, but it'll still be worth it'll be up and available and ready. Couple useful links. I mentioned some of those open resources that Tableau has. Those are on GitHub. Blueprint that I mentioned at the beginning of the call, and the data dev program that I recommended that you sign up for. And then finally, excuse me, recently just announced a new initiative called the Tableau Coders Initiative. This is a bi-weekly Learn to Code with the Tableau API series that I and another person are starting up. It actually kicks off next Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern, and we'll be going every other week after that. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to sign up. I think the timing actually works pretty well for you guys. And now you know everything about Tableau Server. So I don't know, Lauren, if we have time for questions or we're trying to wrap up.
There is one question in the chat, and that's from Ant, and he says, is there a way to see report/view performance in the Tableau Online setup?
Yeah, so Tableau Online does have its own set of those status screens. So I think I might even have Tableau Online instance up. Let me see. I don't, but yeah, so you can just go to the status screen inside of your Tableau Online instance. It works the same way as Tableau Server. So you do have access to a performance screen. It's the load to views or something like that. I forget what it's called offhand.
Cool. Thank you. And that's the only questions that we currently have in the chat. But thank you so much, Zach, for that talk. It's always nice to kind of see all of the Tableau Server side of things and Tableau Online as well. Just one question for me, actually. Do you recommend Tableau Server or Tableau Online?
I like the control that Tableau Server gives me. So, you know, especially if you are an organization with not a very big, IT team, and you don't have the resources and you don't want to worry about it, Tableau Online is great. But if you want to get every last thing that you can out of your server, you want to have all the flexibility that you need, and you just want the ability to upgrade when you want, things like that, Tableau Server is the way to go.
Cool. Thank you very much. Someone's just commented in the chat saying our admin is going to be getting really annoyed with them now. Brilliant.
Yep. Once you see all those things that are available, there's a lot of power, a lot of stuff that you can get out of Tableau Server for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate you joining us at such an early hour on your
Absolutely.
time.
Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. Unfortunately, Colin's had to dash off to go and pick his child up from the nursery, but you're left with Ella and I. So Ella, do you have any closing words before we go back to tables?
No, just to say thank you. It's been a really good session and good to see everybody here, and hopefully stick around for a little bit and have a chat.
But yeah, okay, let's go back to the tables. Feel free to stick around and chat with whoever else is on your table. Also, try and find the speakers. Marc did have to duck off as well. But again, we have his contact details if you want to ask him any more questions. But thanks a lot, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.